That moment, his hand on mine, so soft, so steady, was the beginning. For days after that couch encounter, my thoughts were a fog. Everything seemed unchanged. Ethan still brewed his morning coffee, played his soft jazz in the afternoons, greeted me with that gentle, familiar smile. Yet everything felt altered. I second-guessed it all. The way he looked at me, the way I laughed too loudly at his quips, the way my heart skipped when his arm brushed mine in the kitchen. I'd stand at the stove, pretending to focus on dinner, while inside I unraveled. Was I imagining this? Seeing something that wasn't there? Projecting my loneliness onto someone who just needed family? That question haunted me most. He'd lost his mother. I was all he had left. He needed comfort, not confusion. I was supposed to be a safe haven, but my mind kept drifting to the feel of his hand, the way he held my gaze a moment too long, the softness in his voice when he asked about my past, my pain, my dreams. It wasn't just grief or affection. It was something else, and it terrified me. Late at night, I'd sit on my bed's edge, staring into the mirror across the room, not just looking, staring, trying to see what he saw, to understand why now, why me. Was there still something in me worth wanting? My ex-husband never made me feel beautiful, not truly. Sure, there were compliments, mechanical, tied to birthdays or anniversaries, but never in those quiet, unexpected moments that matter. He'd pass me like I was furniture, say he loved me while his eyes looked through me, touch me like it was a duty, not desire. Slowly, I shrank, not just in spirit, but in presence. I stopped wearing bright colors, laughing loudly, hoping for touch that wasn't routine. I learned to vanish gracefully, quietly, completely. But Ethan, he saw me in ways that felt too raw, too real, too dangerous. He began complimenting me, softly, casually, but deliberately. You always smell like vanilla and cinnamon. It's comforting. That blue dress makes your eyes look like the ocean. I love your laugh. It's real. Most people fake it, but yours comes from somewhere deep. It was never creepy, never forward. It was worse, sincere. That sincerity tore something open inside me. I wanted to tell him to stop, to create distance, to remind him of what we were supposed to be. But I didn't. I couldn't. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt wanted, and that terrified me more than anything. What kind of woman craves attention from someone who calls her aunt? What kind of woman entertains such feelings, knowing their weight? Every time he smiled at me like that, it chipped away at my resolve. Like water eroding stone, I was the adult, meant to be the strong one, the protector, the one with boundaries. But my boundaries had become blurred lines, harder and harder to see. There were moments I'd catch him looking at me from across the room, not obviously, but subtly, carefully, intimately, like he was searching for a part of me no one else had tried to find. I'd pretend not to notice, busying myself with dishes or flipping through a book I wasn't reading. But inside, my thoughts screamed, "This isn't right. You know it's not." But why does it feel like the most honest thing you've felt in years? I tried to clear my head. Long walks alone, sitting in the park with a journal I lacked the courage to write in. Every time I tried to put my feelings into words, my pen froze. Naming it made it real, and real meant dangerous. Still, it grew, that feeling, like a vine wrapping slowly around my heart. Soft, silent, impossible to ignore. He'd walk into the room, and my breath would hitch. He'd lean over to show me a sketch, and I'd feel the heat of his body, reminding myself to blink, to breathe, to not feel what I was feeling. One night, I stood outside his bedroom door. No reason, just standing there, listening to the soft scratch of his pencil, the faint music from his speaker. I imagined knocking, asking to talk, spilling everything tearing me apart. But I didn't. I walked away back to my room, my guilt, my silence. I didn't know what scared me more, telling him how I felt or learning he felt the same. Looking back, it didn't happen all at once. It was like a tide rising slowly. You don't notice until the water's at your ankles, then your knees, then you're submerged. That's how it felt with Ethan. The tension wasn't loud or obvious. It was quiet, careful, growing in the silence between words, in looks held too long, in the shrinking space between us. At first, it was subtle. Hugs that lingered, his hand resting on the small of my back as he passed me in the kitchen, our eyes meeting across the room, and neither of us looking away quickly anymore. Every glance carried weight, every touch felt like a question. I told myself it was still nothing, still innocent, but deep down, I knew. Then came the movie night. It was one of those long, quiet evenings when the world outside feels distant and everything inside feels too close. We decided to watch an old black and white classic I loved, one Ethan had never seen. I made popcorn, he grabbed a blanket, and we curled up on the couch, as we had a dozen times before. But this time felt different, the air thicker, not uncomfortable, just charged. Halfway through, he leaned in slowly and rested his head on my shoulder. No words, no warning. My body went still. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did, and that terrified me. His hair brushed my cheek, his breath warm against my collarbone. My fingers trembled around the wine glass in my hand. I focused on the screen, trying not to feel his weight, trying not to breathe too deeply, trying not to want. But I did, and I hated myself for it. I told myself he was tired, that it was platonic, that I was overthinking. But he didn't move for the rest of the film, and neither did I. We sat there, wrapped in the same blanket, saying nothing, but everything was said in the silence. A few days later, a storm hit. Thunder, lightning, sheets of rain pounding the windows. The lights flickered twice, then went out. I found candles in a drawer, lit them, and placed them around the living room. The glow was soft, golden. The house looked warmer, like something from a dream. Ethan joined me on the floor by the fireplace. We shared the blanket again, drinking tea instead of wine. The candlelight made his face look older, or perhaps it just revealed the pain in his eyes more clearly. We sat in silence, listening to the rain, watching the fire. Then, without looking at me, he said, "I used to think grief was like a wound, something that would scab over and heal. But it's not. It's like a room you just live in. Some days the lights are on, other days you can't see anything." I didn't know what to say, so I placed my hand on his, just enough to say, "I hear you." He looked at me, not with tears, not with a smile, just with raw, quiet honesty I hadn't seen in anyone in so long. "Why does it feel like we're the only two who understand each other?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer, because he was right, and we both knew it. I felt something swell in my chest, too big to swallow, too dangerous to voice. So I stood, said I was getting more wine, but really I needed to move, to break the tension, to remind myself who I was and what this wasn't supposed to be. My heart thundered as I walked to the kitchen. I gripped the counter, eyes closed, trying to push it all down. Then I heard his voice, soft, tentative, like a confession left on a doorstep. I dream about you sometimes. I froze, every muscle still. He didn't say it loudly, didn't sound sure he meant to say it, but I heard it clearly. I turned slowly, still holding the wine bottle, the candlelight casting long shadows on the walls. He wasn't looking at me when I returned, just staring into the fire, as if the flames could explain what he'd done. I sat beside him, careful to keep a little space between us, but that space felt thin, fragile, like glass, see-through, delicate, one word from shattering. I didn't ask about the dreams, and he didn't elaborate, but the silence that followed said enough. That night, after he went to bed, I sat in the living room alone, candles burning low, rain still falling, my thoughts louder than any storm. What scared me most wasn't that Ethan dreamt of me. It was that I'd been dreaming of him too. There's a moment when everything you've held back slips, and once it does, you can't unfeel it, unsee it, undo it. That night, that moment was mine. It was late, the kind of late where the world feels asleep, but inside you're wide awake. I'd just finished the dishes. The house was quiet, except for the fridge's hum and the soft patter of rain against the windows. Always the rain, showing up when things got too heavy to bear. Ethan was sketching at the table, his head bent, pencil moving in short, confident strokes. He was working on something personal, he said, but wouldn't show me yet. I made us tea, cinnamon and black, just how he liked it. When I handed him the mug, he smiled, but it wasn't his usual smile. This one was sad, tired, like something inside him was breaking, and he didn't know how to hold it together. I sat across from him, and for a while, we drank in silence. Then he spoke, slowly, deliberately, about his mom. How some days he could hear her voice, others he couldn't recall it at all. He felt untethered, like he didn't belong anywhere, like he was wandering without a map, an anchor, or anyone who truly saw him. Then he looked at me. "Except you," he said, barely above a whisper. "You're the only one who feels real." I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the mug like it was my only anchor. I wanted to tell him I understood, that I knew what it was like to feel invisible, like the world had moved on without you. But the words wouldn't come, because the truth was, he wasn't invisible to me anymore, and that terrified me. He stood, walked around the table, and sat beside me, close, too close. My breath caught. The silence between us was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. Then he reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Slowly, carefully, reverently. "You're beautiful," he said. I shook my head, eyes stinging. "Don't," I whispered. "Please don't." But my voice wasn't convincing, even to me. His hand brushed my cheek, soft, warm, and then he kissed me. It was gentle at first, like a question, and I froze. Everything screamed, "Stop, move, say something. This can't happen." But I didn't move. I didn't stop him. because part of me wanted it, desperately. I hadn't been touched like that in years, not with affection, not with awe, not with feeling. The kiss deepened, not frantic, not rough, just slow, painfully slow, like he was memorizing every buried emotion. And I let it happen. I let it wash over me, let myself forget, for one fleeting moment, who we were supposed to be. When it ended, he looked at me, not like a boy seeking approval, not like a nephew seeking comfort, but like I was something sacred, holy. And all I felt was shame, crushing, suffocating shame. I stood quickly, backing away, like the air had turned to fire. I said nothing, couldn't say anything. My heart pounded, hands shook, thoughts spiraled. What have I done? He looked at me, his face open, searching, scared, but I couldn't meet his gaze. I turned, went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and cried. Not because I didn't want him, but because I did. And that was the worst part. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, unrecognizing the woman staring back. What kind of person lets this happen? What kind of woman loses herself in the arms of someone who trusted her, someone who should have been off limits? What kind of woman welcomes it? I didn't sleep that night, lying in bed, replaying every second. His eyes, his touch, his voice, my weakness. When the sun rose, everything looked the same, but nothing was. Things only spiraled from there. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold so you don't miss what happens next. This story is far from over. The morning after, I woke to birds chirping outside, as if the world hadn't noticed what happened within my walls. Everything looked unchanged. Curtains swaying in the breeze, the teacup from the night before on the nightstand, slippers tucked at the bed's foot. But I wasn't the same. I felt hollow, like something inside had cracked, unfillable. When I left my room, the hallway was silent. Ethan's door was closed. No music, no scent of his usual coffee, just silence. And silence is louder when it carries guilt. We didn't speak that morning, didn't look at each other. I went through the motions, coffee, breakfast, dishes, but couldn't stay still. I felt exposed, raw, like every surface in the house had eyes that saw what I'd done. So I started leaving. Errands, longer walks, grocery trips for things I didn't need. Anything to avoid being in that house with him. I thought distance might make it fade. That kiss, that night, that moment. But it didn't. It clung to me, quiet, invisible, everywhere. Ethan, to his credit, didn't push, but he didn't pretend nothing happened. Every time we crossed paths, his eyes searched mine, soft, pleading, confused, and I couldn't hold his gaze. When I looked at him, I didn't see my nephew. I saw the boy who kissed me like I was air, and he was drowning. The moment I forgot who I was supposed to be. 3 days passed, each heavier than the last. On the fourth morning, I found a note on the kitchen table, folded once, my name in his handwriting. I stared at it, hands trembling, before unfolding it. I don't know what last night meant to you, but it meant something to me. I didn't mean to make things worse. Please talk to me. Ethan. I sat at the table and cried. It was easier to be angry, to avoid, to pretend I was the only one hurting. But that note reminded me he was hurting too. Maybe worse, confused. I wanted to protect him from the weight of it, But how do you protect someone from something you helped create? I didn't write back. Couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I started dreaming. Vivid dreams, some beautiful, some terrifying. In one, we were in the kitchen, laughing. He took my hand, and it felt like peace, simple, pure, love without shame. In another, my sister was there, looking at me, disappointed, heartbroken. She didn't speak, but her eyes said it all. How could you? I'd wake, gasping, sweating, sometimes with tears on my pillow, my body torn between revulsion and longing. I wanted to erase it, but part of me relived it nightly because it was the only time it felt real. That scared me most. I'd sit on my bed's edge in the middle of the night, replaying the kiss, the slight tremble of his lips, the heat of his palm on my cheek, the way he looked at me, not as broken, but whole. I hated myself for missing it, for feeling like something was taken away rather than something to be ashamed of. I started avoiding mirrors, wearing baggy plain clothes, tying up my hair, skipping lipstick, as if making myself invisible would erase the feelings. But they followed me through every room, every conversation, every moment I stood too close to him or not close enough. I felt the shift in Ethan, too. He was quieter, less sure, stayed in his room more, stopped showing me his sketches, stopped laughing at his own jokes. Still, neither of us spoke of it, because saying it meant admitting it was real, facing the cost, choosing between guilt and truth. Neither of us was ready, not yet. There's a silence that doesn't comfort, it condemns. That was the silence I lived in after the kiss, wrapping me like a heavy, suffocating shroud. I couldn't eat properly. Food tasted like cardboard. I'd sit before the TV, pretending to watch, but my mind was trapped in that night, that moment, that choice. The worst part, I didn't know if I regretted it for the right reasons, or just because it happened. I'd stare out the window for hours, asking questions I didn't want to answer. Was I a terrible aunt, a selfish woman, desperate for affection, grabbing at the first warm body that saw her? Was I broken, lonely to delusion? Was I the predator, and the one that cut deepest? Would my sister hate me for this? That one gutted me. I could see her face, soft, radiant, smiling with her whole body. She trusted me with Ethan, her son, her world, and here I was, holding that trust like a fragile, broken thing in my trembling hands. I tried to talk about it once, booked a therapy session, sat on that gray couch, surrounded by framed degrees and flickering candles, tissues already on the table, like they knew what I'd say. The therapist had kind eyes, asked about my divorce, the shift to single life, grief, isolation, loss. I nodded, gave half-truths, enough to seem honest. When she asked, "Is there something you're afraid to tell me?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. The words were there, on the edge of my throat, waiting, but I couldn't say them. Once I did, there'd be no pretending, no, maybe it wasn't that bad, no soft lies to sleep beside. "No," I whispered, "not yet." I left feeling more trapped than when I arrived. That night, I sat on my bedroom floor in the dark, considering asking Ethan to leave, to pack and go. It would have been cleaner, easier, safer. But how do you ask someone to leave when they're the only light left in your life? How do you say go when your body screams, stay, and if he left, taking that light with him, that was unbearable. I didn't tell him. Instead, I distanced myself again, pulling away when he got close, keeping conversations brief, filling the space with meaningless errands, projects, lists, anything to avoid the tension still dancing between us. But even then, he found a way through. A few days later, I found something on my pillow, a simple wooden frame with a photo he'd taken weeks earlier of us on the back porch, bathed in golden afternoon light. I remembered that day. We'd been planting herbs, hands dirty, laughing because he'd gotten soil on his nose. He looked free in that moment, and so did I. Beneath the photo, in his handwriting, "No one's ever made me feel seen like you." I held the frame to my chest, and my heart cracked in two. I wanted to scream, to grab him, tell him to stop, that this wasn't love, couldn't be. I wanted to hold him, apologize for pulling away, for the confusion I'd caused, for the ache in his eyes every time I passed him like he didn't matter. Most of all, I wanted to disappear, to erase myself from this story, to stop being the person who let the line blur, who let the silence linger, who wanted what she shouldn't. That night, I lay with the frame beside me, staring at the ceiling, tears slipping down my face. I whispered into the dark, "What am I doing? Who am I becoming? Is there still time to stop?" But the silence didn't answer. It never does. I still don't know how to define what happened. Was it a mistake? A lapse in judgment? A moment of weakness disguised as comfort? Or something else? A moment of emotional rescue gone too far, born from two broken people trying to stitch their wounds together, only to realize they'd sewn themselves into the same unraveling fabric. The truth is, I have no answer. I've replayed it 1,000 times, and the lines blur more each time. One moment, I'm disgusted with myself. The next, I feel sadness for us both. Sometimes I wonder if what happened was the only real thing I've felt in years. That's what hurts most. It wasn't just physical, but emotional, deep, human. Yet it felt like betrayal, to my sister, to Ethan, to myself. So, I ask you, have you ever faced a situation that didn't fit neatly into right or wrong? Have you ever been so lonely, so unseen, that you mistook comfort for love? Share your thoughts below. Tell me what you'd have done if you understand, or if you don't. I need voices outside my own echo chamber. I need to know I'm not entirely lost. If you've read this far, something in this story touched you, even just a little. So, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because at Heartfelt Tales Unfold, we don't shy from the messy, uncomfortable, raw truths of being human. We tell the stories that live in shadows, the ones no one else dares voice. And there's more to come. This has taught me that sometimes lines blur, not because we're careless or reckless, but because we're human. Humans are messy, flawed, complicated. We want to be good, to do right, but sometimes we just want to be seen, held, told we matter. When no one offers that, when the silence in our lives grows louder than our conscience, that's when cracks form. When we make choices we never thought we could. If you're in that pain, talk to someone. Call a friend. Find a therapist. Write, cry in the shower. Scream into a pillow. Let it out, but don't let it fester in the dark. Silence shapes you into someone you don't recognize until it's too late. If you're judging from the outside, I understand. It's easy to say what should have happened when you're not in a lonely house with a fragile heart. But for those who've been there, you know how easily affection can feel like oxygen, how survival can be mistaken for love. Some stories don't have tidy endings. Some don't end at all. They linger in memories, dreams, the questions we carry quietly through life. Some stories don't close. They leave you with questions you carry forever. Thank you for listening, for not looking away.